What's up, Wildcatters? Welcome back to another episode of the Will and Gas Sodas podcast. We got our buddy Jeff Boyle with Vintri Tech down from Calgary, right?
Yes.
Awesome.
What are you doing in town?
Came down for San Diego GPA Midstream Conference and spent 3 days there, and now over in Houston.
So that was in San Diego. That's not even here.
That was San Antonio. Sorry.
Oh, San Antonio.
Yeah. Did I just say San?
Yeah, you
San
said San Diego. I was like, damn,
My bad.
we're doing that out in San.
We were just talking about
We're at
San
the wrong
Diego.
oil and gas conferences.
No.
I need to go to San Diego.
I'm just popping over that quick. Yeah,
Different sands.
San Antonio GPA Midstream Conference, and so spent 3 days there with. It was pretty impressive. 1,600 attendees.
Awesome.
A lot of owner operators, a lot of supply chain. So everyone in there checking out new technologies, keeping each other up to speed on new regulations and all that good stuff.
What's gas
Awesome.
up to? Like $5-6?
What's that?
What's gas up to?
Yesterday it touched $6.20. I think it's settled under like $5.90. But yeah, it's around $6.
Yeah.
It's getting
So
up there.
well, and there's a lot of conversations also about how the industry is going to tackle like carbon capture pipelines and renewable.
Oh, did you
diesel
see this thing with the
facilities.
Sierra Club? It just reminds me. It pisses me off. But Sierra Club is fighting back. They're building some carbon sequestration pipelines up in Nebraska, and Sierra Club's fighting them on it, saying that CO2 capture is just a way for oil and gas companies to greenwash the industry. And I'm like, this isn't even. It's not even an oil and gas company doing it. It's a carbon sequestration company that's building pipelines. I was like, they just hate pipelines,
They
regardless.
just try to stop it no
Just
matter
hate
what.
pipelines, no matter. It could be piping water. And
I mean,
they just
I'm
stop it.
in Canada, so I get to feel that quite
Yeah,
a bit.
you feel it for
Yeah,
sure.
there's not a lot of pipelines getting built up in
Yeah.
Canada right now.
Tell me, what's the name of the company mean? Because I've never asked this question once on the podcast. Like, what's the name mean? But I was just curious because there's a tool that you use in oil and gas called a Venturi basket. And so y'all's company name reminds me of Venturi. I was just curious what the company name came
Okay,
from.
okay. It could be that could be based off of same wording and whatnot. So the name came along before I joined. But as I was looking back and asking everyone like, where did this come from? What's going on? I couldn't get a straight answer. So then I started looking up and realized that it's based. Well, it should be based off of a phrase of "truth prevails."
Okay.
So there is like Victritis. I can't remember the other word,
Okay.
but it was like Vintri looks like those two words brought together, and I was like, I think this is it. But no, I wish there was a cool story behind that, but they don't know what or how
I was just like,
they picked it.
I was like, it looks kind of similar, and like a Venturi basket essentially operates kind of like this vacuum. Like you run it down to suck junk out of a well, and so it's kind of got this vacuum effect. So I was like, maybe there's like some like etymology where it's like, you know, venture means something, and like you guys had played off that name too. I don't even know
Yeah.
what y'all do. I don't know what your tech is or what you guys even do. So
Well, to that point, it's
why don't you tell us? That's
yeah,
a good. That's a
yeah.
good
So
segue into what do
we're
y'all
a data
do?
we're a data preparation company, but we're focused in on the data integrity and the preservation of all of the original sources of the data. So like in your bullpen, you've got a lot of great companies that are focused on cleansing the data, normalizing it, bringing it all together, right? So when it comes to asset data and the DNA of each of these pipe, flanges, fittings, downhole or midstream or upstream, you need to have traceability, which I know you guys have talked to a lot of people around the traceability, but you also need to make sure that the supply chain is passing all of this data over and that you don't actually smash the data together and consolidate it and eliminate anomalies. Like a lot of traditional data preparation off the shelf will be like, oh, there's some anomalies here. That doesn't make my graph and my chart pretty, so let's delete those.
Yeah.
Well,
Remove the outliers
in
to-
asset
yeah.
data, those anomalies could be flanges that don't meet their engineering specifications, that failed their non-destructive testing. So
You're talking about if equipment fails. I mean, you have catastrophic failure where there's life or environmental damage. So you can't just say, hey, we'll remove these outliers to polish up our graph and make it look good because that piece of equipment got passed through and it could result in a failure.
yeah, every anomaly essentially has to be stack ranked with an issue and flagged and allow the professionals to dig in and say, is this bad data capture? Is this a discrepancy between the physical asset and its digital representation? or is this actually a catastrophic issue that could create additional risk down the line, right? So
Yeah.
there is use cases and unfortunate examples of the wrong material being installed in the wrong place, and in those incorrect conditions, it costs lives.
So on the data management, the data preparation side, I think you can say that, and it means 20 different things to
Yes.
20 different people, right? So kind of diving into that, is it you guys are, I'm trying to think like, how do I ask this question? What is like the main problem that you're solving? And then I think that'll help understand exactly which angle that you're taking on the data preparation side.
Yeah, the main problem is that there is a lot of capture tools out there,
Okay.
and there's a ton of data presentation tools
Yep.
and data integration methods and strategies. There's not a lot of data integrity tools out there that are taking all the disparate sources and then translating it into a single ledger. We're a centralized ledger, not a decentralized, but we can't get into that debate. We don't have enough time.
I'd love to talk about that.
But
soon.
so we've got our centralized ledger, and then we're cross verifying. So we're saying, hey, to build a pipeline, you've got at least 10 different suppliers that are interacting with that material data. Do they all actually line up? Do they all agree it's the same thing? Do they all agree that this specific pipe came from that specific coil, and all of the specs for engineering and procurement and everything else actually lines up? So our focus is, can you trust the data? Because for the most part, the industry kind of treats the data as secondary, and they focus on the physical asset in front of them, which is right. They're the inspectors in the field and at the manufacturing facilities. They have to focus on that physical asset in front of them and check all of its parameters. However, if you're looking at these assets 10, 15, 50 years from now, the only source of truth you have is the data. So we're trying to put that lens on, like, okay, 10 years from now, would we be able to tell the difference between this flange and this fitting?
Mhm.
Would we be able to tell where this was made and who made it? And if there is a major recall, would we actually be able to trace back to that coil, that slab that created
So if
it?
you have 4 different pieces of data that are conflicting,
Mhm.
right? As opposed to just assuming one is right, you guys are going through and verifying which one exactly is right.
We throw the flag on, and then the professionals, like the engineers, dive in and do the forensic audit.
Okay.
So the software is very much about translating all the data
Mhm.
into a single format, because everyone's got their favorite form. They've got their favorite data capture tools. No one will agree on even a format of a spreadsheet. And so they're each going to use their own systems, but then you can translate it into one language, and then you can actually cross check it. And then, like I said, the issues go back into the suppliers, their QA/QC teams, the owner operators QA/QC teams, and they then settle and say, okay, this was an anomaly in the data, this was transcription errors, or nope, that pipe wasn't never supposed to come to our job site. That's someone else's pipe. That's the wrong spec for this project.
So what's the end result after? So you're able to identify certain anomalies. What do they do with it now? Is it, I mean, are you guys kind of going into the data lake, data warehousing space, or are you making changes to the data at the source? Do you have a record or a ledger of the changes that took place? Like what is the end result around the execution?
Yeah, so great question. The platform has a full changelog ledger.
Okay.
So as the suppliers are making their changes and updates and corrections, it's tracking who did what. And that's very important for liability and future potential claims and so forth. So we never change anyone's data.
Mm.
That's critical for this form of data preparation. So you send the issue back to them, they correct it, and then you track all of that. For the data lake standpoint, what we're noticing is the owner operators are all working with their own partners. They're building their own data lakes,
Yeah.
right? But they're all heavily influenced by a supply chain that is feeding them additional data. So while they're building their own in-house data lakes with their own partners, we're saying, okay, well, we've got a really flexible, cost-effective method to make sure that the streams coming from your supply chain don't taint that beautiful data lake that you're trying to build. So the big teams that are going after the API integration platforms, taking all of those in-house systems and trying to create a single source of truth for them, we're focused on making sure the single source of truth coming out of the supply chain doesn't mess all the hard work that they're doing inside.
That makes sense.
I love that you brought up the point of being centralized and not decentralized, because I was actually just thinking about this a couple days ago because everyone talks about the future being decentralized, but come over to like oil and gas is like we just need to centralize and get data in one spot that can be trusted. And so I think that technology always ebbs and flows, and you have different points in time where hey, may makes sense to be decentralized or may make sense to have a centralized database. But I'm a big Bitcoin and blockchain fanboy, so I talk about decentralization all of the time. But there's
Yeah.
definitely like cases where it's like, hey, just need to get all the data centralized and have a source of truth that can be verified and just reliable
Yeah.
at the end of the day.
Well, there's so much debate over one engineering firm's system being better than the other engineering firm. And the owner operators in this situation with asset data, they are the central owner of that data. They're responsible to the public, to the regulators, to everyone for making sure what they designed and engineered was built and was maintained. So a centralized system for them works really well. Also, like I was listening in on a lot of your previous podcasts, and your recent guest, I mean, it was impressive how many of the objections to decentralize that they had hit on, right? Like the energy consumption, the security, all that different stuff. But when we were hiring DLT developers and looking at should we swap over to a DLT format, we had this is federally regulated pipelines. So we had individuals in the Securities Commission saying, okay, you're going to take federally regulated data and you're going to then stand up a private node in a foreign country that it could be a state owned company. So that was, I mean, that was a while back, but at that time, it was just a dead stop for them. And we had current customers. We're bootstrap. We've been running this off of our own revenue for 9 years. So we couldn't go against our current customers and all of a sudden jeopardize the
No.
security for their data.
Yeah.
I do believe that there's huge strides on that side, and that's not
Yeah.
really the debate anymore. It's more so for us, we were able to take that change log over and utilize the ledger and give the transparency. The only thing we weren't able to do is yes, there is one owner of that data, but in this
Yeah.
case, the owner operator does own that data.
Yeah, for sure. Um, and just speaking about pipelines, did you see this is like so far on left field. I'm gonna throw this at you. Did you see that article that the New Yorker put out about climate terrorists? Did y'all see this?
No.
I saw it.
Oh, I've been all hyped up on it all week, so I gotta talk about it now that we're talking about pipelines. But the New Yorker put out this article talking about, well, first off, it was like broken down into a couple pieces, and there was a podcast in there, and the podcast was titled "How to Blow Up a Pipeline." And yeah,
Wow.
your reaction, yeah, like,
Wow.
hey, maybe you shouldn't like publish that. And anyways, it was they were highlighting this climate activist, and they were encouraging people like, hey, we have to take violence now to save the world, and we can no longer just
Out of the New
no
Yorker, out of all magazines.
yeah.
How
That's
fucking
what's
random
crazy
is
about it is
that?
because like the New Yorker's fonts that they use are all
Yeah.
like they're like these fancy scribes and it looks all nice. It's like how to blow up a pipeline. I'm like pretty sure like if you did that for any other like how to blow up an airplane, like you'd be on a list pretty quick.
I feel like that's like the equivalent of like GQ taking a hard stance against pipelines.
Yeah.
That's just too much. I mean, you bring up a point that I actually focus on personally. Like I'm a founding member of Energy Ecosystem Initiative, and it's based around trying to create curriculum-based videos and lesson plans for high school students to just understand that it's an energy mix and that there is no polar right or wrong, and that like the transition can go many different ways, but right now it's an energy mix and how can they complement each other and support each other. Because I mean, right now in Alberta we've got a brand new polypropylene plant that just went online. It's producing or it's taking natural gas and producing these plastic pellets that are some of the most sustainable plastic out there. And lo and behold, there is certain US manufacturers of certain products that say they're going to end oil and gas that want that plastic for their vehicles
Yeah.
and want that for their products.
Yeah.
So they're like, there's no canceling one for the other.
Yeah. Well, that's what I've started saying, demand for energy as a whole, not just hydrocarbons, as a whole continues to grow. And so you can add on capacity of renewables, which is great, but you have an energy mix, like you said. So I tell everyone it's an energy addition, not an energy transition. Like we're just adding different power sources to the mix right
Yeah.
now.
And the problem has always been that the industry takes a factual stance against an emotional stance. So it's so hard to have any kind of healthy debate. Healthy debate seems to be gone now. Like you can't have a
Yeah.
healthy
I'm about to drop a
debate in this case.
podcast, how to blow up wind turbines.
So on our initial video, like it's all about, we try to throw out 3 pros and cons for each, right?
Yeah.
And we're just trying to encourage the students to go out and do their own research.
Yeah.
But to your point, they
That's
could
really
come up
good.
on that article and they can get skewed so quickly depending on what they
That's
what they
actually really
research.
interesting to me, kind of the education. Well, I mean, for digital wildcatters, it's a big mission for us to educate the public on energy as a whole. You know, we're big fans of everything energy, as long as it makes sense. But every energy source has pros and cons, right?
Yeah.
Like every single one does. And I think that's interesting to educate the kids, because I have kids, and my oldest is 10 years old now. And even with his old pops, it's comes from oil and gas. Like he's like, oil and gas is bad, renewables are the future. And you have to like really sit down and like educate them and teach them about energy. And if you're not proactive in doing that,
Yeah.
they get the opposite side, because a lot of people are talking about the opposite side. And then you start getting it's just weird. Like we've got this like jihad on energy assets now. Like it's so politicized that you have like climate, like people wanting to blow up pipelines. But how do in the midstream space, like how do you guys think about, because I mean it's a thing now. It's just NIMBYs are everywhere, and it didn't just end with Keystone XL
Mhm.
pipeline. Like it's gonna be every pipeline now. So how is that how does that affect y'all's business, and just kind of like going into the midstream community as a whole? You see that these pipelines, not just oil and gas, carbon sequestration now. Like I
Yeah.
said, like does that how does the community think about that?
I mean, that's a big question, but
Especially coming from Canada.
so
Like,
from our perspective, we built the platform asset agnostic.
yeah,
So we've got the current asset, like it's asset centric. It's built on NoSQL, so it's very flexible, and that's how we're able
yeah,
to translate all these different relational databases into a common ledger for us. And we made it asset agnostic so that we could stand up the models at will,
well, that's a good point.
without being
So for you guys,
developer
like,
focused.
yeah, does the software even know if you're talking about a pipeline or if you're talking about a different energy asset?
No, the professional services team bring in the context, and they're the ones that help make sure the algorithms and the different cross checks actually know what's supposed to be going on. So
Got you.
they're the ones leading edge. I mean, I wish we could say we've got machine learning and artificial intelligence doing it.
No, dude,
We don't have access to that much data yet, but we've got some very smart data analysts.
First off, let me give you some praise for saying that. I can't tell you how many companies say that they have machine learning and artificial intelligence, and it's a group of analysts in the back
That's
closet
true.
around a table. I can't.
Yeah.
So many companies
When they've got
do
the
that, so-
cloud and they've got a little box of experts and they're just pointing the experts towards the cloud, that's context. That's
Yep.
the group that is bringing in
Yep.
probably most algorithms.
Yep.
But yeah, it's
No,
cool
that's-
to say MLAI.
Yeah,
and-
no, like I got major respect for that. Like just say, hey, we got a great team of data analysts that are giving context to the data.
We've been very fortunate in Canada, so we might be the only startup that was on every major pipeline project there for a while. Now that's not
Oh,
saying
nice.
much because there's not a lot of major pipeline projects in Canada.
There's only
But-
one, guys.
Hey,
We got
he's
one
gotta be the
client.
biggest.
But
biggest,
at one
biggest
point,
fish
there
in the
was
pond.
4 major pipelines in Canada, and we were on all 4. So we're just like, okay, we're doing something right. And they allowed us to de-risk the solution so that we could make it scalable and affordable for like a 13 joint section replacement.
Yeah.
And then one of those customers then said, hey, we've got 5 compressor stations. Can you prove it out on that? So we got really lucky with some visionaries, some early adopters
Yeah.
that allowed us to de-risk it all
That's
and
great.
and show like a great example of just value right now for the industry that is still building. And there's still tons of pipelines coming. It's just no one talks about them anymore because then they get on the radar.
Yeah.
But it's actually getting pretty exciting. There's a lot of new projects being announced, not just renewable diesel and carbon capture, but new gas lines. There's LNG facilities needing to be fed. So as those keep popping up, then they need new infrastructure to feed
Mhm.
them. There's a ton of aging historical infrastructure that needs to be properly replaced
Yeah.
and can't be just turned off. Otherwise, everyone experiences what the winter storm gave everyone a taste of for a little bit. So
Yeah.
can't just turn it off. Can't
Yeah.
just
Just give up the
instantly
switch and say,
replace
we don't
it.
need it.
So
we don't need it anymore.
from a standpoint of just value and what's coming, usable, trustworthy data has allowed one of our projects to save and eliminate over 3,000 miles of material movement. So for them, they're now adapting and saying, well, okay, this is now an ESG story. We can apply this to the ESG initiative. This is a health and safety story. We're taking usable data, and it's not just catching stuff early so that it doesn't impact workflow at construction or at commissioning timeline. It's also usable data is allowing us to truly eliminate in areas where the public and the regulators have said, hey, there's room for improvement. So
Yeah.
it's an interesting fact. The market is I'd say 40% of the market is embracing data capture. So they've got iPads out there, they've got forms of some sort, and they're going after eliminating the clipboard and the paper. There's 50% that's still pretty traditional in their turnover packages and banker boxes, and they're just waiting to see what path they tackle.
Yeah.
The last 10% are where we target right now, in that they've been capturing data long enough that now they're like, okay, just capturing it doesn't give us accuracy. We need to actually cross verify and check that it's a game of telephone, right? So if all 10 sources give you your information in a different format and a locked PDF and a scanned PDF and whatnot,
Mhm.
it's borderline impossible for those QA individuals to catch everything and to
Mhm.
actually see, does everyone agree? But if you get it translated into one language, now you can be like, okay, all 10 agree. Let it pass. You still need the professional to dive into that MTR, that birth certificate, and check the certain levels. But they can now check that one and then see like the niobium level and the carbon equivalency of all of their assets on a scatter plot chart in a BI tool. So they can feed their data presentation tools that they like and that they're adopting
Yeah.
with trustworthy data.
That's awesome. You made a comment that the company's bootstrapped within cash flow for 9 years.
Yes,
When did you join on?
I'm 5 years now.
5 years in. What was your background?
So I spent a decade staffing up oil and gas projects.
Okay,
So
cool.
I worked with like project managers to build out their team, construction managers, and so forth.
Yeah.
So I knew, I mean, it was a technology enabled service. It leveraged a lot of software to keep track of all the applicants and actually maintain a skill base that wasn't just throwing up a posting and throwing whoever came into the job.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed and was super curious about like how these fractionation plants were getting built, how like froth treatment plants were getting created, the major pipelines, and I understood the different silos within the organizations of why it was so hard to get QA and dock control and projects and commissioning all on the same page, because they were literally working in their own silos. So of course their data was going to be in silos.
Yeah.
And then they send it out. They have it in, it's so frustrating though still. They have everything in such usable data formats at engineering, and the second they send it out to supply chain, they send it out in PDFs. They take it from structured data to unstructured data
Yeah.
to go out to the supply chain, right? To have everyone bid on it and work on it. And it's just watching that whole path. I was like, okay, I get this. And at the time when I joined, we were very focused on traceability. So, like my first mission of taking over marketing was to not be known as the barcode company anymore, because on all these major pipelines, we had a QR code with 1D barcode with alphanumeric behind it. So secondary identifiers, they're great, but you and I can go to the grocery store right now, and if we scan in a barcode and it's got bad data behind it, we're not paying the price we're supposed to be paying. And we also might be paying for something and buying something that we shouldn't be buying because it should have been recalled because the
Yeah.
data behind it's incorrect. So same with secondary identifiers, like traceability. There's the physical traceability aspect, which is a tool that's needed, but the data behind that secondary identifier or just associated to that stencil or stamp, that's where the real value is. So about 5 years ago, we stopped marketing as a material traceability company and really focused in on the fact that to give the industry material traceability, what we were doing is auditing the data for its integrity, its trustworthiness, and its traceability. So
Mhm.
you got to do a lot more to just get to traceability, and there's just so much more benefit and value outside of just that one niche.
Yeah. 9 years into the company's progress, you said, you kind of gave us a breakdown of the market, 40%, 50%, and then y'all are targeting that 10% that's been capturing data. But now I was looking at essentially how you keep that data cross reference and accurate. Um, how does the market look like moving forward? I mean, are a lot of pipeline companies are they starting to get over that hump, that 50% and say like, oh, hey, we should really start being looking at this? I mean, you think just like data capture saying like, hey, we should, get off paper and clipboard and at least just start capturing data. You think that a lot of companies would already be at that point, but it sounds like most of the industry is not. Do you see them? Are they starting to kind of turn that corner and get over that hump?
Conversations are getting a lot more exciting recently. Before we would try to, like that visual that you were talking about, where we've got the funnel, then we've got the filters, and then we feed into the other systems. Before you throw that up there and people will be like, well, I think we're just tackling the first phase data capture right now. And then we've got Power BI over here. So I think we're good. And we're like, okay, but this whole filter section, like yes, you have your own engine, but how much better can your engine run when you have a fuel filter?
Mm-hmm.
Like trying to just give them some kind of analogy of like, hey, there's so much value here, but not having the use cases.
Yeah.
So the big thing has been just building up the use cases, getting our customers to share more with us. We had one of our partners, TC Energy, come out with an article talking about the accessibility value of it all, right? So very hard to get the industry to want to build a case study to talk about how many errors and issues are in the data. Much easier for us to get someone to talk about the accessibility of their data. So they came out with great quotes like things that used to take us 3 months to chase down, now we have at our fingertips. And so we're like, okay, maybe we open with accessibility, get our foot in the door with accessibility, and then that's our chance to show them the accuracy side, the trustworthy side,
Yeah.
of actually doing the QA/QC
I
on the
mean, the
data.
accessibility point's a big point too, right? Like you want to enable companies and employees of those companies to be able to do more high impact work and have quick accessibility to data instead
Yeah,
of having to go dig for it, right? So I mean, that's a good value
Yeah,
proposition
isn't
in itself.
accessibility essentially productivity?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you talk to whether it's on the owner side or it's on the supplier side, you talk to the right person and all of a sudden you uncover that they're spending 40-50% of their week chasing stuff. And
Yeah.
especially in these huge relational databases, it's kind of like you guys were talking about, like the transition of drilling, right? Relational databases is like old school drilling. You just dive in and you go deep, deep, deep into that folder structure, and you hope where you land is where you wanted to be. If not, you pull all the way back and then you go in again, and it's just peck and search in so many cases. Now, enterprise content management tools are coming out with a lot of tagging, labeling, which is really helpful. We adopted that too because it's super accessible. But there's just a way of how to get it to the market. So what I was saying with that visual is now in most recent meetings, and especially since I've been able to come back down to the States, we've got owner operators saying, we want to talk about the data integrity section. Let's talk about that. So we are seeing the market. They've done enough data capture. They've tried out a couple tools, and they've realized that you can have the best, most UI friendly form in the market whatsoever, but because you have to depend on 9 to 10 other suppliers with their versions of the truth and stuff like that, you need something to cross verify it and bring it all into one page. So all these asset integrity systems, the ERPs, they all, and the AI tools and stuff like that, they all have one major commonality. They all seek usable data. So like another visual we have, which we don't have on the website, is just Maslow's hierarchy, right? And we, at the top, you've got the digital twins and the AI tools and stuff like that. And you're like, those are amazing. But below that is usable data. And most people just aren't paying enough attention to how much data preparation and data integrity and preservation needs to be done to all of that to make that usable data to feed into those other solutions.
Yeah,
So
I mean that's a horse that we've definitely we've been on it on the show of
Mhm.
hey, AI, machine learning, it's great, but you gotta have good data underlying or being fed into that. You have to have good inputs before
yeah.
you can really unlock the value.
Well, we've got a lot of friends in other startups that like are focused in on digital twins. And luckily, because we were able to talk to them, they're going ahead with having 2 layers in their digital twins, right? All these CAD models that only show you what's expected. I mean, that's not really giving you any insight. Every CAD model out there needs to have what's expected and what's the actual,
Yeah.
and be able to show both those, right? So we've got partners that they take the CAD model and overlay the LiDAR scan or the photogrammetry scan and show expected versus actual from a physical standpoint. Well, we've now been able to start testing out, feeding into their system where they have the material data for expected, and then from Vintri we can feed in the actual. So there's a lot of room to grow there, and it's interesting to see that some of these flashier, prettier looking solutions are actually the solutions that point out to the owner operators that they need the filter.
Yeah. So, for this conversation is interesting to Jake and I because we've talked about data management for
Since day one.
yeah since day one. On this show, most of it's always been upstream, so it's interesting to hear about how midstream deals with it and the solutions that are out there to handle it. So if someone's listening to the show and they're interested in finding out more information about you guys, what's your website? Where can they find you at?
Yeah, so it's Vintri Tech, so VINTRITECH.com.
All right,
So they can jump on there. There's a bunch of different avenues that they can pass over their information. They can also reach me, Jeff Boyle, on LinkedIn.
cool.
Love having conversations. Love seeing how we can collaborate with other solutions too, because there's a lot of innovation out there that wants good, clean, usable data fed into it. So
Yeah,
lots of opportunity there.
yeah, really cool stuff, man. I appreciate you coming on the show and teaching us about it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right, guys, take 2 seconds. Go sign up for the BDE newsletter. Also, check out the new BDE show live at 10:30 a.m. every Tuesday. Colin and Chuck are kind of going through all the news of the week, oil and gas, broader energy, lots of dank memes, a couple different skits, the normal Chuck Yates stuff. So check it out. We'll catch you guys in the next episode.